David and Benji Bolton, a brother and sister team, were featured in My 600lb Life Season 6. Both of them were quite overweight. They were dependent on their family to meet their everyday demands because they were unable to conduct any bodily chores. When Benji initially saw Dr. Now, he weighed 582 pounds, whereas David, his brother, weighed 747 pounds. Even though David was the heaviest, he managed to change himself even more. Many were surprised by his change when he recently posted a fresh picture of himself on social media. To view the image, continue reading. David's progress throughout their episode was far more amazing than his brother Benji's. The hero of My 600lb Life managed to lose 141 pounds. He was eligible to have bariatric surgery. After a while, Benji caught up and was also given the all-clear to operate. By the end of his episode, Benji had lost 364 pounds, bringing his total weight down to 218 pounds. David, meanwhile, lost 361 on his program. He weighed 386 pounds when he departed the show. After the episode, Benji decided to stop using social media and deleted all of his online images. Thankfully, David stays in contact with his admirers on the internet, and many were taken aback by his most recent image. David Bolton just shared fresh images on Instagram when he was trying to lose weight. The My 600lb Life celebrity shared a picture of himself and his kid at a park with a Christmas theme. The message also served as a celebration of his daughter's home purchase. He declared, "I'm very proud of my little child who grew up to be a gorgeous young woman. She and her husband bought their first house today, and I'm so happy for them. Trinity, you have my undying love." It's unclear if the picture was shot in December of last year. However, it's evident that David has shed a lot of weight in front of the camera. He could weigh less than 300 pounds today. On April 28, 2024, he also posted a new picture of himself and his partner enjoying some outside activities. This demonstrates his increased level of activity. Benji made news last year when his wife disclosed that he was a part in a shooting event, whereas David Bolton has a fulfilling life. According to reports, the My 600lb Life actress was shot 8 times. Additionally, Amanda Bolton started a GoFundMe to assist with Benji's medical expenses. Since the startling occurrence, there has been no update. However, Amanda managed to gather more than $8,500. In a special episode, David and Benji also made a comeback. Regretfully, the two acknowledged that they were no longer dating. It's unknown if their relationship soured. However, David asserts that the significant life changes exacerbate his mental health issues and that the production team misrepresented the medical expenses they were expected to pay. The bedside table's digital clock showed a harsh, merciless 3:17 a.m. This hour was a familiar, confining hug for David Bolton. It was when the slow, throbbing agony in his knees peaked, radiating up his legs and settling deep in his lower back. That was the moment when just rolling over in bed turned into a huge task, a well-planned movement of shifting weight and bracing arms against a mattress that seemed more like a sinking ship than a haven to rest. David, who weighed 620 pounds, recalled a time when the world seemed to have no boundaries. Now, his world had shrunk to the size of his bedroom, which had become both his haven and his jail. One day, he would be able to play basketball with his pals until the sun set and walk for kilometers without feeling constrained by his own body. Those recollections were like fading photos in a dusty book, remnants of a past existence. The television hummed gently in the background, a constant companion in the long, lonely nights. Even going to the bathroom was now an adventure that required careful preparation and a deep breath before he hauled himself up, each action a painful reminder of the life he had lost. He frequently watched programs and reality shows about individuals who were accomplishing amazing things and leading wonderful lives. They used to give him motivation and a glimmer of hope that he would be able to regain some semblance of that life. Lately, however, the inspiration had given way to a deep sense of sadness and a dull aching of jealousy. His choice to apply for My 600lb Life wasn't made overnight. He was a spectator in his own life, watching the world pass by from the sidelines, imprisoned in a body that felt strange and unresponsive. The understanding that he was running out of time came slowly and painfully. His physician had been direct, his remarks akin to a slap across the face. His organs were under tremendous strain, his heart was having trouble, and if he didn't make significant adjustments, his prognosis was bleak. A strong incentive was his dread of abandoning his elderly mother and of never again enjoying life's small pleasures, such as a stroll in the park, a lunch at a restaurant, or an embrace from a loved one without the discomfort of his sighs. The day the video team arrived felt unreal. It was a last-ditch attempt to save his life before it was too late, a desperate appeal for assistance. All of a sudden, the world was hearing about his personal battle. And first sensation of humiliation followed by a desire to blend in and vanish occurred. Beneath the embarrassment, however, was a deep-seated need to be heard and understood. He discussed how comfort food had helped him cope with stress and loneliness, the vicious cycle of emotional eating, and the humiliation that caused him to further isolate himself, which in turn led to further eating. He exposed his weaknesses, anxieties, and regrets. Years' worth of suppressed feelings were released in a therapeutic way. Dr. Even though Nauseradan, the famous bariatric surgeon, didn't say much, his eyes were sharp and his manner was straightforward. The reality wasn't sugarcoated by him. It would be a physically and emotionally taxing voyage. He would experience failures, periods of uncertainty, and moments of wanting to quit up. However, he also provided a ray of hope and a path to better health in the future. From where he stood, the first objective was to drop enough weight to be eligible for weight loss surgery, which seemed like an impossible undertaking. The first few weeks were a harsh awakening. The rigorous diet seemed like a punishment, a never-ending struggle against the desires that had long provided him with solace. Every movement during the excruciating physical therapy sessions served as a harsh reminder of how much his body had atrophied. Exercises that were easy to others seemed like Herculean undertakings. On some days, he longed to give up and return to the security of his former routines. Every hardship, every sorrow, and every moment of hopelessness were captured on video. It was unvarnished, exposed, and horrifying, yet something changed in the middle of the conflict. Little triumphs began to seem to him. Even if it was only a pound or two at a time, the scale was making progress. He could stand a little while longer, walk a bit farther. Even while it was still there, his knee discomfort wasn't as crippling. His mother, bless her heart, was his rock, and he began to sense a glimmer of hope, a little ember that he strove valiantly to kindle into a blaze. Her unshakable faith in him served as a lifeline during his darkest hours, and she was a continual source of support. She prepared his nutritious meals, went with him to his appointments, and listened to him when the emotional strain was too great. He was aware that he was battling not only for himself but also for her, for the opportunity to be the son he felt he could be and the son she deserved. The day he learned he was cleared for weight loss surgery was a turning point in his life. It was a mixture of terror and joy. Although the procedure was risky, it was his best shot for a future. He attended support groups, talked to a therapist, and psychologically prepared himself for the drastic changes that were ahead throughout the months-long process of preparation. The actual operation was a fog. He recalled the bright operating room lights, a nurse's comforting voice, and then the blackness. His stomach ached dully when he woke up, but he also felt incredibly light and as though a big weight had been removed. It was a difficult path to recovery, full of suffering and the need to get used to a whole new way of eating and living, but the changes grew more noticeable every week. The physical constraints that had characterized his existence for so long started to fade as the weight kept melting away. He was able to walk farther without becoming tired, stand for longer periods of time, and even climb stairs without feeling like he was about to pass out. The emotional change was as important. The layers of self-doubt and humiliation began to peel away along with the fat layers. He began to leave his comfort zone and re-establish a connection with the outside world. He did something he never would have imagined doing before. He joined a gym. As he concentrated on his own journey, rejoicing in little triumphs and forming bonds with people who were also on their own journeys to health, his initial anxiety of being evaluated swiftly vanished. He began to rediscover the basic pleasures of life. Feeling the breeze in his hair and the sun on his cheeks, he took walks in the park. He ate a nutritious supper in a restaurant without worrying about taking up too much room. A little triumph that made him cry was that he was even able to wear clothes from a normal retail store. The cameras kept recording his trip, catching the successes and failures, the highs and lows. He was now an inspiration rather than merely a sufferer. One of the most moving moments was when he was able to embrace his mother without the awkwardness of his size standing in the way. Letters and comments from people who had been moved by his tale, expressing their own hardships and finding hope in his recovery, poured in. As the months grew into a year, then too, David's metamorphosis was nothing short of remarkable. It was a simple hug, but it said volumes, a monument to the love and support that had sustained him through his darkest days. It seemed almost unreal that he had shed more than 500 pounds. In soul as much as look, he was a distinct person. He was no longer limited to his bedroom. The world was his to explore. The guy who had been imprisoned in a body that seemed foreign was now enjoying life to the fullest, seizing every chance with a renewed feeling of purpose and thankfulness. He began working as a volunteer at a nearby animal shelter because he enjoyed helping animals that, like him, needed a second chance. He re-established contact with old pals, overcoming the distance caused by years of loneliness by exchanging tales and giggles. As a monument to his amazing journey, the cameras were there to record the moment of his last reveal, when he stood in front of the globe. The man who had formerly weighed more than 600 pounds was now a healthy, energetic man with a brilliant grin on his face and eyes that gleamed with vitality. He talked about the difficulties he had encountered, the times he wanted to give up, and the steadfast support that had kept him going. The startling before and after pictures were a visual depiction of the enormous effort and unyielding commitment that had gone into his metamorphosis. His journey wasn't just about losing weight, it was also about reclaiming his life, finding his voice, and uncovering the strength and resilience that were dormant within him. He talked about the value of loving oneself, believing in oneself, and never giving up on the possibility of a better future. He had overcome his inner battles, confronted his demons, and triumphed. The experience of My 600 lb life had been difficult, revealing to the public his most private weaknesses. However, it had also served as a spur for transformation, a stage on which he could tell his tale and encourage those going through comparable difficulties. He was now a living example of the human spirit's ability to triumph over hardship and accomplish the seemingly unachievable. David Bolton's journey served as a reminder that change is possible and that there is always hope, even in the most dire circumstances. His tale served as a tribute to the value of support, the strength of tenacity, and the life-changing effects of having confidence in oneself. In addition to losing more than 500 pounds, he earned a second shot at life, a newfound sense of purpose, and the realization that he could accomplish anything he set his mind to. His strength, tenacity, and unflinching spirit now characterized the guy who had previously been defined by his weight. It was a tale of optimism, of change, and of the extraordinary ability of the human spirit to not just endure but flourish. At last, the cameras dispersed and departed, leaving David alone in his newly renovated house. The stillness had become calm, no longer oppressive. He sat on his couch, which he could finally use easily, and watched the sun set outside the window. Now the outer world seemed closer, more approachable. His quest was far from finished, but he could go out there, explore, and live. It would take a lifetime to maintain his weight, keep up his healthy lifestyle, and deal with the emotional challenges of his metamorphosis. There would be difficulties, periods of uncertainty, and the sporadic need for comfort eating. But now he was prepared. He reflected on the people who had come out to him, expressing their own struggles and drawing inspiration from his, and realized that he had the resources, the information, and the network of support to handle any challenge. He came to the realization that his trip had grown beyond him. It served as a reminder that no matter how intractable the challenges may appear, change is always attainable. He began giving speeches at support groups, sharing his personal stories and motivating those who were just beginning their own weight loss efforts. He emphasized the need of establishing modest, attainable objectives, acknowledging each tiny win, and persevering through difficult and protracted times. In order to share his story and connect with others who were working toward better lifestyles, he even launched a blog. He offered workout advice, recipes, and thoughts on the psychological effects of losing and keeping weight. His remarks struck a chord with individuals from many walks of life, and his openness and vulnerability forged a strong bond. David's physical transformation was evident. He was no longer a man who walked a few steps with difficulty. He was lively, energetic, and active. He started trekking, discovering the paths in the nearby parks and taking in the splendor of the natural world that he had previously been unable to fully appreciate due to his confinement. He even began swimming, experiencing a previously unheard of sensation of liberation and weightlessness in the water. However, his spirit underwent possibly the most profound change. Once tormented by self-doubt and humiliation, the guy was now self-assured, gregarious, and vibrant. He reunited with his family, going to events and holidays without the self-consciousness that had previously prevented him from doing so. He also smiled more, laughed more, and interacted with the environment in ways he never imagined possible. By exchanging stories and making new memories, he strengthened his bonds with his pals. At his prior weight, he never would have thought to date, but he did. His mother witnessed his metamorphosis with a mix of relief and pride. He found love and companionship, a connection with someone who recognized him for who he was, not for how much he weighed. Her heart was heavy with the thought of losing him, and she had been worried about him for a long time. She now seen him prospering and leading a life full of opportunities. Their relationship got even closer as their shared experience forged an unbreakable link. David's tale became a potent reminder that it is never too late to change. He had overcome years of bad habits, overcome apparently insurmountable difficulties, and come out on top. His experience served as a reminder that, with the right conditions and encouragement, the human body and soul are capable of amazing feats. He persisted in showing up on subsequent installments of My 600lb Life, sharing his accomplishments and motivating others. He started to speak out in favor of health and wellness, stressing the necessity for all-encompassing support networks and the need of addressing the psychological and emotional components of weight gain. He often thought of the guy he had been, the man imprisoned in a cage-like body. He sympathized with the man, knowing the suffering and hardships he had endured. However, he was also extremely appreciative of the path he had followed, the difficulties that had molded him, and the chance to lead a life full of happiness, meaning, and opportunity. His startling metamorphosis was more than a simple physical alteration. It was a total overhaul of his life. In addition to losing more than 500 pounds, he also eliminated the burden of self-doubt, dread, and humiliation. Though it has been fictionalized here, David Bolton's story exemplifies the spirit of hope and resilience that is frequently featured in shows like My 600lb Life. It serves as a reminder that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, transformation is possible and a second chance at life is always within reach when one has determination, support, and faith in oneself. His transformation from a 620-pound person to a lively, healthy person was evidence of the extraordinary capacity of the human soul to not just endure but to flourish. He had taken back his life and, in doing so, inspired a great number of others. His tale was one of optimism, change, and the unwavering ability of the human spirit to do the remarkable. His journey's echoes would reverberate, serving as a potent reminder that change is always possible and that even the smallest step may lead to the biggest changes. And that initial step had opened up a world beyond David Bolton's expectations.